The dawn chill still clung to the quad as Patrolman Carl Murphy finished his first cup of coffee and stepped into his booth behind the wrought iron gate of Lindenwood High School. The guard shack, a repurposed gardener's shed, painted school colors blue and gold, smelled of fresh paint and brewing coffee. His breath misted in the pale morning light. A single bulb overhead swung gently in its socket, casting wavering shadows on the clipboard and stack of visitor badges perched on the desk. Murph was no ordinary security guard. At 60, with a grizzled mustache and shoulders still broad from years of high school football coaching, he took pride in knowing every student's face and the rules that kept them safe. He patted the .38 revolver at his hip more out of habit than necessity, then slipped the safety back into place. The morning bell hadn't rung yet, but the first trickle of teenagers was already converging on the quad, hauling backpacks and chattering about homework and weekend plans. At precisely 7:12 a.m., his radio crackled. "I'm Murph, Eastgate camera feed. Possible cut-through," said Principal Delgado's clipped voice. High school gossip traveled faster than text messages, and Murph had learned never to ignore a direct call from the principal. He stepped out of the booth, clipped open the heavy gate, and walked the narrow stone path that led behind the science building. Dew weighed down the ornamental grass, and a distant freight train rattled the windows of the biology labs. Around the corner, he spotted a lone figure slipping through the staff-only gate, one hand shielding the movement of his backpack straps and the other flicking an earbud into place. The boy's stride was confident, almost casual, as though he'd done this a dozen times. Murph squared his shoulders and stepped into the teenager's path. "Hold up there," Murph said, voice firm but not unkind. The boy skidded to a halt, surprised. He wore a hooded sweatshirt emblazoned with an obscure skate brand logo and sneakers scuffed from last Friday's skate park. His dark hair fell in front of his eyes. He looked about 16. Murph motioned to the slip of yellow paper he fished from his pocket. "You know this area is off limits, right? Staff only. I need your name, grade, and ID. Then you'll sign this warning and get on to class. No big deal. Rules are rules." The boy's shoulders slumped, and he glanced toward the front of the building as though weighing escape. I'm sorry," he stammered, pulling an immaculate student ID from his pocket. "I just wanted to grab my chem book. I forgot it in my locker." Murph nodded as he scribbled the information. Name, grade, first offense, signature line. He handed the paper to the boy, who signed with a trembling hand. Murph studied the ID. The student number was correct. The name matched. "Next time," he said, folding the slip and slipping it into his pocket, "stick to the front hallways. You could have tripped an alarm or walked into a lab. Dangerous stuff." "Understood, sir," the boy said, handing back his ID. His voice was polite but tired. Murph handed it back and the boy turned to go. "Hold on," Murph said, lowering his voice. "You all right?" He caught the boy's eyes. A brief flicker of frustration, almost shame, crossed the teenager's face. "Something up?" The boy hesitated. His lips pressed into a thin line. Murph waited, the sun climbing higher, gilding the edges of the brick walls. Finally, the boy shook his head. No, I'm fine. Thank you, Mr. He paused, suddenly flustered by the formality. "Murphy." Murph smiled, the lines around his eyes softening. "That's me, Murphy. Get to class, kid, and keep out of restricted zones, huh?" "Will do," the boy said, shouldering his backpack and jogging down the path toward the main building. Murph watched him go, then closed the gate with a soft clunk. A sense of satisfaction, another potential incident nipped in the bud, settled in his chest. He returned to his booth, tossed the yellow slip into a folder labeled Tardy and Warnings, and resumed his coffee, untroubled. He didn't notice the black-tinted SUV idling at the curb, its front door opening to reveal a driver in a crisp suit. He didn't see the mayor's assistant step out, phone pressed to her ear, urgency in her stride. Nor did he guess that, by the end of the week, the teenager he'd escorted off campus would be revealed not as a rule-breaking punk, but as Ethan Grant, the mayor's own grandson, whose every moment of discipline would soon become a matter of public scrutiny. But for now, the quad was quiet again, and Murph's daily rhythm carried on. Checking IDs, jotting notes, making sure every student who passed beneath his watchful gaze did so safely, and according to the rules he'd built his career upon. Late that afternoon, Helena Grant stood beneath the soaring marble columns of City Hall, her silk-lined coat drawn against a spring breeze that carried the faint scent of cherry blossoms down Broad Street. She had spent the morning presiding over the unveiling of the new community center, smiles, ribbon-cutting scissors, and the flash of cameras, and had just accepted congratulations from the council members when her personal phone buzzed insistently in the pocket of her tailored jacket. She paused on the broad stone steps, lifted the phone, and found Principal Delgado's urgent voice on the other end. "Mayor, I'm terribly sorry to bother you, but security just sent over footage. Your grandson Ethan was given a warning slip this morning for cutting through a restricted area on campus." Helena's breath caught. She leaned against a column, smoothing her gloves with a steady hand. The community center's marble facade glittered behind her, but suddenly it all felt distant, as though she watched it through someone else's eyes. "A warning slip?" she said, voice low but firm. "Are you certain it was him?" "Positive," Delgado replied, and Helena could hear the principal's discomfort even through the crackle of the line. "We reviewed the ID feed, student number matches. I understand it was only a minor infraction, but I wanted you to know immediately." Her heart thudded against her chest. Despite her public role, she was first and foremost Ethan's grandmother. Every parental instinct she had, every protective impulse, flared to life. "Thank you for calling me," she said, her tone softening. "I'll handle it." She ended the call and stood motionless for a moment, the crowd behind her murmuring congratulations and snapping pictures for the evening news. She forced a polite smile, gathered her composure, and walked inside City Hall. The grand foyer's mosaic floor gleamed under the chandeliers, and aides fell into step alongside her, ready with questions about the next fundraiser or press release. She accepted their well wishes with courteous nods, but her mind was miles away, turned over by one small yellow slip of paper the size of a parking ticket. By the time she reached her mahogany-paneled office on the third floor, she was already dialing the number she'd been taught never to use unless the situation demanded it. Security, on high alert for anything involving her mayoral grandson, had given her the direct line to campus patrol, Carl Murphy himself. She pressed the speed dial key and waited, her shoes clicking on the polished hallway marble. A soft click followed by a gravelly voice answered, "Murphy here." "Murphy," she began, keeping her voice level though her pulse raced. "This is Mayor Grant." She inhaled, hearing the slight catch in her own tone. "I understand you issued a warning slip to Ethan Grant this morning." There was a brief silence. She could almost hear the guard shifting in his chair, the faint squeak of his boots against the linoleum floor of his guard shack. "Yes, ma'am," he answered finally, his voice heavier now. "He cut through the staff gate behind the science building. I had to enforce the rule. I didn't realize who he was. I thought he was just another kid sneaking off the quad." Helena closed her eyes for an instant, picturing her grandson's dark, unruly hair peeking around the corner, the flash of surprise on his face when Murph confronted him. She forced herself to breathe evenly. "Murphy," she said, "I appreciate you following protocol, but Ethan is my grandson. I need to know that you treated him as you would any other student, and that you will not punish him further for this minor lapse." "I understand, ma'am," he replied, relief and lingering embarrassment mingling in his tone. "I'll mark it as a verbal warning in the log and shred the slip." "Thank you," she said. "And Carl?" "Yes?" "Continue to do your duty. I trust your judgment." She tapped the end key, then leaned back against her office door, her shoulders dropping for the first time all day. The mayor's office was silent except for the steady hum of the air conditioning and the distant tick of a gilded clock. Outside her window, City Hall's lawn stretched out toward the glittering spire of the community center, a monument she had helped build, her legacy both public and private woven into its cornerstone. She reached for the red phone on her desk and made one more call, the principal's direct line. When Delgado answered, she said quietly, "Please ensure no record of this mistake affects Ethan's permanent file, and thank you for your discretion." As the afternoon sun shifted behind gray clouds, Mayor Grant gathered her papers and straightened her skirt. Protocol had been served, family protected, and trust reaffirmed. Yet in the quiet of her office, she felt the weight of that delicate balance. The duty to her constituents and the love for her grandson settled in her chest like a silent promise. No rule, however important, would overshadow her role as his grandmother. With a final glance at the community center's blueprint tacked to the wall, she rose and stepped into the corridor, the echo of her shoes a soft, steady rhythm of resolve. The next morning dawned gray and cool as Mayor Helena Grant slipped into her City Hall office before the sun had fully cleared the rooftops. The hush of the corridors, a far cry from the day's ribbon-cutting fanfare, felt almost sacred. She dropped her satchel on the leather chair and settled behind her mahogany desk, the carved family crest gleaming on the front. Her assistant, Marisol, stood at attention by the door, clutching a manila folder marked Campus Security Urgent. "Morning, Mayor," Marisol said quietly. "We have the footage you requested." Helena nodded, steeling herself. She rose and motioned toward the adjoining conference room. "Show me." 5 minutes later, they sat before the wall-mounted screen. The grainy video played on a loop. A slender figure in a hooded sweatshirt darting through the quad, slipping behind the science building, and vaulting the small iron gate marked Staff Only. The camera followed the teenager as he straightened, glanced over his shoulder, and tucked an earbud away. In slow motion, Helena's eyes locked onto the crest embroidered on the boy's backpack, a heraldic shield she knew all too well. "Zoom in," she ordered. Marisol pinched the screen controls to magnify the emblem. A rampant lion flanked by oak branches, the exact symbol of the Grant family. "That is the Grant crest," the mayor whispered, leaning forward as though afraid to wake the image. "That's Ethan," Marisol's breath caught. "But he's your grandson." Helena pressed her fingertips to her temples, the weight of the revelation pressing down like a physical force. "Murphy doesn't know," she said. "He thinks this is just another rule breaker." Her jaw clenched as she considered the guard's unwavering commitment to duty and the potential fallout if the story leaked before she could contain it. On the screen, the boy, Ethan, produced his student ID and signed the warning slip with a quick, nervous flourish. He tucked it into his pocket and jogged toward the main building, head bowed. The clock in the corner ticked past 7:15. Helena's pulse throbbed in her ears. "I'll handle it," she said, voice low but absolute. She stood and smoothed her skirt. No one else must know. Across town, in a modest colonial home on Sycamore Street, Ethan's mother, Claire Grant, sat at the kitchen table in her worn sweater and slippers, the morning paper spread before her. She folded the family news section and sank back in her chair, glancing at the clock. 7:45 a.m. She picked up her cell phone, intending to confirm field trip chaperones, when her mother's number flashed on the display. "Claire." The mayor's tone was soft but urgent. "Did you hear about Ethan?" Claire's heart leapt. "No. What happened?" She stood, nearly knocking over her coffee mug. "He was given a warning slip for cutting through a restricted area this morning. Security footage confirms it was him." Claire's breath caught in her throat. She clutched the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. "My God." "I'm managing it," Helena said, "but I need you to call Principal Delgado right now. Explain it was a misunderstanding. Emphasize that there will be no need for further action." Claire's hands shook as she punched in the school's number. In the next minute, she'd moved from panic to fierce determination. After all, her son was a good kid, not some truancy risk. She pressed call and adopted her calmest tone. "Principal Delgado, this is Claire Grant, Ethan's mother." Meanwhile, Murph returned to his guard shack for a second cup of coffee, oblivious to the familial storm he had stirred. He tossed yesterday's yellow warning slip into a box labeled "To be filed" and slid open the window to peer across the quad. A pair of freshmen dragged oversized textbooks past the staff gate while the morning bell had yet to ring. He sighed and reached for his radio. "Campus security, this is Murphy. Any word on that permission request?" Static crackled in his earpiece. Unaware his call would go unanswered, he tipped back his mug, the lukewarm coffee a poor substitute for the punch of cream he liked. Outside, students jostled on the path toward the main entrance, the lawn brightening with the promise of spring. Murph rubbed his eyes, straightened his shoulders, and leaned back, confident he'd done his duty. But as he lifted the coffee to his lips, his phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at the caller ID. Mayor's office. His chest tightened. He riffled his pockets for the number he'd been told to memorize in case of emergencies. With a sinking feeling, he answered, voice gruff. "Murphy here." "Yes, Carl," came the mayor's measured tone. "We need you at City Hall, right away." Murph's hand trembled on the receiver. "Ma'am, please come to my office. It's urgent." He set down the mug, its contents sloshing over the rim, and donned his cap and jacket with care. As he locked the guard shack and pocketed his keys, he paused to look back at the school's gates. His domain. A knot of apprehension twisted in his gut. He knew he'd followed the rules. Yet now, on the threshold of City Hall, he realized that today his vigilance would be judged not by policy alone, but by the family he'd unknowingly tested. And as he climbed into his patrol car, the late morning sun gilded the campus behind him, bright, inviting, and unaware that the delicate balance between duty and discretion was about to be tested in ways no rulebook had ever anticipated. Murphy's shoes clicked against the polished terrazzo floor as he followed Principal Delgado down the long, paneled corridor toward the office at the end. The hush of the school building, usually filled with the echo of sneakers and lockers slamming, felt impossibly still. Murphy's heart pounded so loudly, he was certain the principal must hear it, though Delgado's expression remained impassive as he led the way. The door swung open to reveal Mayor Helena Grant standing behind Delgado's desk, her tailored navy suit immaculate, even under the harsh fluorescent lights. The mayor's face was pale, eyes steady and unsparing, as if she were appraising Murphy not only as a security guard, but as a grandfather might appraise the boy he protected. Beside her sat Ethan Grant, shoulders slumped on the visitor's chair, his signature Grant family crest emblazoned on the backpack at his feet. Now, Carl Murphy, the mayor began, her voice calm but carrying the absolute weight of authority. Thank you for coming so promptly. She offered him a seat, but he remained standing, cap in hand, uniform crisp and unblemished. Murphy's throat tightened as he met her gaze. He swallowed once. Ma'am, he said, voice gruff, I understand you wanted to discuss this morning's incident. Delgado slid a laptop across the desk. The screen paused on the still image of Ethan vaulting the staff-only gate. Principal, did you have the footage ready? The mayor asked. Delgado nodded. Yes, and I've verified the ID match. That is indeed Mr. Grant's grandson. Murphy felt the floor tilt beneath him. He clasped his cap so tightly the brim creaked. Mayor Grant's steely eyes softened for a fraction of a second as she turned to Ethan. Young man, she said, voice low enough that only he could hear, I hope you understand why campus rules exist. Ethan nodded, cheeks flushed. Yes, Grandma, he murmured. The mayor rose and set her hands on the desk, leaning forward. Murphy, you did your duty. You enforced the rules equally. That is why I respect you. Murphy exhaled a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Thank you, ma'am. I just saw a kid in a restricted area, and protocol. His voice trailed off. Mayor Grant raised a hand. No further action will be taken. The warning slip should be voided. We will treat Ethan as any other student. She turned to Delgado. Ensure the record is cleared and that he receives only a verbal reminder. The principal's nod was immediate. He tapped a few keys and closed the laptop. It's done, he said. Ethan stood, shifting from foot to foot. He looked at Murphy with uncertain eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered. Murphy knelt to meet him at eye level, lowering his voice. Just stay on the paths, kid. Rules are there for a reason. The boy managed a small grin. I will, he promised. Murphy rose, dusting off his uniform. Mayor Grant extended her hand. Thank you for your integrity, Carl. He bowed his head and responded, Always, ma'am. As Murphy left the office, the corridor's silence felt lighter, as though the building itself had exhaled. Ethan's footsteps echoed behind him, no longer furtive, but striding with purpose. Murphy paused in the doorway, watching the boy blend into the current of students returning to their classes. He straightened his cap, heart still racing, but a quiet pride settled in his chest. Today, he had upheld the rules, respected authority, and learned that sometimes the most delicate balance of duty and discretion can protect not just a school's safety, but a family's bond as well. The next morning, Murph arrived at his guard shack before the dawn patrol car had even warmed its engine. The air was crisp, as though the world were holding its breath in anticipation of what had passed and what was to come. By 6:45, he was drinking his first cup of coffee when he noticed Ethan standing just inside the iron gate, leaning on his backpack straps with an uneasy posture. The guard booth's light cast a soft glow on Murph's weathered face as he stepped out, hat in hand. Morning, Ethan, Murph said quietly, his voice steady but warm. Ethan looked up, relief flickering across his features. He lifted a neatly folded yellow slip, this morning's voided warning, in his hand. Here, he said, voice earnest. I wanted you to have this. He extended the paper as if Murph might refuse it. The guard shook his head and closed the distance in 2 strides, taking the slip with a gentle nod. I appreciate that, Murph replied, tucking the slip into his jacket pocket. Now, how's the ID situation? He asked, gesturing toward the student card, still clipped to Ethan's lanyard. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, sheepish. I keep it visible now, he admitted, unhooking the ID and letting it dangle openly. I got it in my pocket all day yesterday. Murph's stern features softened. Good. That'll keep things simple. They paused together beneath the arch of the gate, sunlight slanting across the quad. Murph unhooked a small metal badge from his shirt, his personal commendation for 10 years of service, and held it out. You know, I've worn this for a long time, he said, voice low. It's a reminder that even guards have to earn respect every day. I want you to have it. Ethan's eyes widened as he carefully accepted the badge, turning it over to admire the engraving. Duty, honor, trust. Murph tapped his own chest, over the spot where his heart beat. Now wear it when you're nervous, like you were yesterday. It'll help you remember that rules exist to protect, not just to punish. Ethan nodded, slipping the badge into a pocket of his backpack. They stood in companionable silence, the school's bell tower chiming the hour, students crossing the lawn without a second glance. By mid-morning, news of the gesture had rippled through the faculty lounge and into the mayor's office. That afternoon, Helena Grant slipped into Carl Murphy's guard booth unannounced, wearing no mayoral sash, only a look of genuine respect. She reached into her purse and drew out a small wooden box lined with velvet. Placing it on the counter, she opened the lid to reveal a crystal star inscribed, City of Lindenwood, in recognition of exemplary service, Carl Murphy. Murph's mouth fell open as the mayor stepped forward. You upheld your duty even when you discovered who Ethan was, she said softly. You treated every student with fairness. That's the mark of true service, and it deserves to be honored. The mayor's words resonated through the quiet booth, and Murphy's shoulders sagged with humility. He accepted the star, his hand shaking, then saluted her, a gesture she returned with a steady nod. As evening fell, Murph returned to his post under the lamplight by the gate. He fastened the crystal star beside his badge and looked across the quad, where Ethan's silhouette receded into the school building. The guard shack's light glowed brightly, illuminating the path to every rule-posted sign and open doorway. In that moment, Murph felt a renewed sense of purpose, that vigilance tempered with compassion could bridge generations and remind them all that respect, once earned, could light the darkest corners of any institution.